Hello friends, welcome to the 7th episode of our System Design Fundamentals. So before we begin today's episode, let's go ahead and check out the questions that we have received. There is only one question from John and let's address this, and also to mention that please feel free to drop a comment if you have any doubts or what do you think about the video. So please let me know in the comment section. So John says at 1027, you mentioned that partition tolerance is we should be able to partition the data and keep a chunk at different locations. And also at 1421 mentioned that we cannot partition the data as compared to NoSQL. Isn't this closer to the definition of sharding or horizontal data partitioning rather than partition tolerance? So partitioning, John, is more of a generic term for dividing data across multiple tables or databases, whereas sharding is a specific type of partitioning. It is part of horizontal partitioning. There is also something called a vertical partitioning that we have seen in case of a relational database, where we normalize the table and split it into multiple tables in order to store. So horizontal partitioning or sharding is replicating the schema and then dividing the data based on a shard key. And vertical partitioning involves dividing the schema. Basically, we break the schema into multiple tables as we have seen during the normalization of relational databases, right? So yeah, sharding and partitioning are both about breaking up large data set into smaller subsets or smaller data sets, you can say. The difference is that sharding implies the data is spread across multiple computers. Partitioning is about grouping the data. It's more of a generic concept that you can say over here. Coming to the second part of your question. So having said that, I don't get why SQL DBs are not partition tolerant. Let us take MySQL as an example. MySQL has a group replication plugin and it follows primary, master and secondary replica concept. Yeah, more of a master slave configuration, you can say. So let us assume that there are 5 instances of MySQL in a group, 1 master and 4 replica. Okay. Assume master loses its connection with all the other replicas, that is network partition. So after some time, replicas automatically elect a leader and the system start performing as usual, right? While the leader election is going on, there is a possibility that the write might get rejected, keeping consistency or split brain scenario in mind. Therefore, MySQL will still be able to serve read requests, so it does tolerate the network partition here. So this gap theorem that we have discussed in the last episode, wherein we have seen there are 3 combinations, right? CA, CP and AP. The main point is that we cannot have all these 3 in a particular configuration. For example, a MySQL is generally considered as consistent and available. So it falls over here. So this is the default behavior of it. But if we want, we can change the configuration and we can move to this as well, right? So this is more of the default behavior that our DBMS comes with. Now over the time, there are many plugins as you mentioned and many things has changed. As you see over here, that it is mentioned that we can have availability and partition tolerance with Cassandra. But can't we have consistency and partition tolerance with the Cassandra? Of course we can. There are a lot of plugins and a lot of things that has changed over the time. So this is the initial theory that they came up with, is that these are the default behavior, and the thing that is true still about this theory is you cannot reach this zone. This is impossible. When you have partition tolerance, you cannot have consistency and availability at the same time. Now coming to the second part of your question about the master slave over here. Let's say you have a master and you have 5 or 6 slaves, right? And you gave a scenario to us over here that when your master disconnects with all your slaves, so basically all this goes off. These 6 slaves over here, they elect a leader, which is also called a leader election. One of them starts behaving like a master and it connects to all the slaves, right? So that's a very fair scenario that you have mentioned, that it works like this. Similarly, we have 6 slaves, right? So let's say this was my configuration. And now this connection was lost. These 3 connection was lost. So I have a cluster over here and these 3 guys over here is going to elect one as a master and the other 2 operates as a slave, right? In this case, you might face a problem wherein you will have two different clusters running parallelly, and the data will start becoming inconsistent because some of the requests will be going to this cluster and some might go to this cluster. However, MySQL has a clustered configuration as well. It prioritizes CP or consistency and partition tolerant over availability. The cluster will shut down if there is not enough nodes alive and all those things. So those are plugins, again, to mention over here that this was the traditional definition and a lot of things has changed. Now all these CA, CP and AP can be achieved by many of the SQL databases as well. But again, the main point over here is that you cannot have something that will fit in over here. This is still a dead zone for you. So yeah, John, you are correct. I won't say that you are wrong. There is a lot of changes that has happened over the time, which has made the theorem a little bit flexible, but the main point or the main concept of the theorem still remains the same. Here are a bunch of things that you wanted me to explain. Definitely, John. Going ahead, we'll cover all this. All the points has been noted. 2PC, 3PC, Saga, everything I'll cover one by one. So let us first understand the problem that we are trying to solve over here. So this is the problem that we are trying to address over here. So let's say that I get a value called Tom and we pass it through a hash function and we get a number, right? And we know that we have 6 systems with us. So we do a mod with 6 and the number that we get is say 3. And what will happen is that this data will go to the third machine and it will be stored over there. So when we get another record over here, let's say Jerry over here, and pass through the same hash function, what will happen is it will produce a completely different number. So let's say we have an entry like this called Jerry, and when we pass through the same hash function, we get a number something like this. And when we do a mod with the number of machines, that is 6, we get a number 4. So we know that this data over here is going to this machine over here. Now the problem starts when I wanted to change this. I wanted to add few new machines over here. So now what will happen is I have 8 machines and this results will change. So previously it was 4 and 3. So this will now get changed. So doing mod with 8 will produce 1 and 2. So with addition of new machine, what will happen is when I search with Jerry, the number that I'll get is a 2. And when I go to the second machine over here, I won't find any record, right? Similarly for Tom, I'll go to the machine 1 and I won't find the record because the data is stored in 3 and 4, right? So what will happen is there will be a complete reshuffling of data when we increase the number of machines or even we decrease the number of machines. So let's say I have 5 machines now. So what will happen now is my data will change. So with the reduction of machine, we see that this number has changed to 2, but initially it was 4. And similarly, Tom has changed to 0. Initially it was 3. So as and when we change or we add or we decrease the number of machine, we see that our value changes. So this causes a big problem when we want to scale this system, right? And we are doing a horizontal scaling over here. So we wanted to add more machines without disturbing the entire system. So you can understand that if I have 10 machines over here, so all of them will be impacted. So this entire storage or this machines is going to get disturbed as and when we remove or add new instances. To save us from this problem, we have consistent hashing to our rescue. So let's understand how consistent hashing takes care of this problem. So in consistent hashing, we have something like a clock or a ring, you can say. So if you see a clock, it starts from 12 and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and it comes back to 12 again, right? So similarly in consistent hashing, we have a ring which looks just like the clock. So this is our ring over here and this ring, just like a clock, will have a number. So let's say it starts from 0 and it ends at 999. It will be actually a very big number, but for the sake of simplicity, I am taking a range of 10,000. So we have 0 to 9999 is the 10,000 numbers. And now what we are going to do is we are going to take a hash function similar to this system that we have seen, right? And we are going to use this hash function in order to determine the position of each of the machine in the ring. So what I'll do is I'll take the first system, I'll take any of its parameter which is unique, maybe IP or anything, we can take anything, and we are passing it through the hash function over here, right? And this hash function, as always, will produce a number which is pretty big. Let's say the number produced by this was something like this, just for the sake of simplicity, right? And we know our range is 9999, so we do a mod with 9999 of this number, and what we get is the mod value, which is 15. So this machine passed to this hash function has produced a result which is say 15. So we are going to place this machine on the 15th position in the ring. So this machine comes and sits somewhere over here. Similarly, we take the second machine and we use the same hash function, and let's say we got a number which is say 180. Similarly, we do the same with all the machines, and let's say we got some random numbers. So let's say this is how my ring looks after I put all the machines using the same hash function and doing a mod. So we have a machine at 15, 180, 321, 480, 1550, 2800, 5000, 7000 and so on, right? So all the machine will get a number, and which is definitely lower than 9999 because we are doing a mod. So we have placed all the machine in the ring, and now how this helps, let's try to understand this over here. So this ring can be a clockwise ring or a counterclockwise ring, it's completely fine. So let us take an example that this is a clockwise ring, right? So what will happen is this machine over here is responsible for storing all the data starting from 15 through 179. This machine over here stores all the data from 180 to 320. So basically this value, the starting value until the value -1 of the next node. So similarly, this guy will have 321 to 479. He will have 480 to 1549 and so on, right? So what does this range signifies? So when we are doing a mod, we know that the number that will be produced is between 0 to 9999. So when I get a record, it will have some primary key or it will have some shard key, right? We'll go into the sharding part later. So based on that primary key, we are going to do a hash of the primary key, and then we are going to do a mod operation, and that will produce a number between 0 to 9999, right? If the number is between 15 to 179, we know that it's going to go to the first machine. If it is between 180 to 320, it's going to go to the second machine. So if you see, the entire ring is covered. The number that will be produced is always going to be in between 0 to 9999, and we have the entire range covered. So next time when you are searching for some data, so once you get the primary key, you are going to do a hash, and after that you are going to do a mod with 10,000, right? You will get a number, and looking at that number you can determine easily where your data is, right? Let's say you got a number 4000. So you know the machine whose range starts from 2800 has a range till 5000, and you are looking for a record whose operation has produced 4000. So you know that this machine over here is holding the data for you. So this ring allows you to add more and more machines to it to scale the data, and without disturbing rest of the machine, with only one machine being impacted, you can add or remove new server to the system. So when I get a data to be stored with me, so let's say this data has came as a request to be stored over here. So I will pass it through the same hash function, and let's say the number that was generated is 999919, something like this. I'll do a mod size of my ring, and the number, let's say I get is a 19. So I know this falls in this bucket, so I will be storing this data over here. So this data goes and sits somewhere over here in the ring, and let's say another data comes in, and the mod and all I did, and the value that I get was 2850. So I know that this data is going to go and sit over here in the ring, right? And from this range theory, we know that this is going to be handled by this guy over here, right? So this is very simple. Now let's see how it helps in order to address the problem that we have seen earlier. So let's say I wanted to increase the number of machines. I have 10 machines and now I wanted to have another machine, let's say. So I take this machine, use the same hash function, and the value that I get doing this operation is say 3500. So I know that this machine is going to come and sit over here. So just try and visualize it over here, that what happens when a new machine is introduced over here. Who gets disturbed? So let's put the range first for all the nodes that we have. So this was my range for each one of this machine. So a new machine has come over here, right? 3500. So who gets disturbed? So this guy becomes 2800 to 3499. Does anybody else get disturbed? Does this guy gets disturbed? No, he doesn't, right? So he gets a new responsibility of storing data from 3500 to 4999, right? So this machine over here is going to take some of the load from this guy. So he is just passing on the data from here to here. Whatever data is higher than the range of 3500 to 4999. So he's just doing a passover, right? So you can see that entire chain is not disturbed by this, right? So whenever I add a new machine or remove a new machine, the entire system is not disturbed. Their value does not get impacted. So this is how the consistent hashing takes care of your problem of adding or removing new machine to the existing system. So now let's understand how this consistent hashing is used and how availability and consistency is taken care using this. So here we are at the data stacks page, which is for Cassandra. So we are going to understand how we are going to have this consistency level configured. We understand well now that how the availability is taken care of, right? We have so many replicas. So for understanding purpose, let's take an example over here that we have a replication factor of 6. So our data has to be stored in 6 different places, right? So that even if 5 of the data goes down or the machine or the server goes down, I am still good to serve the data from the remaining one. So I have a replication factor of 6. So with that, let's understand what is this consistency level and how they are configured. So consistency level comes in two major places. One is when you write the data and the other is when you read the data. So as you can see over here, we have the write consistency levels and we have the read consistency level in this document, right? I'll share the link so that you can refer to it as well. So the first consistency level, or the highest one you can say, is all, which makes your data fully consistent. So what does all means? So all means, suppose my coordinator node is contacted, right, with a piece of data to be stored. And I know that I have to store in 6 places. So let's say I'll be storing one copy with me, the other copy goes to him, another copy goes to him, and similarly the 6th copy goes to the 6 different servers. So let's say it looks something like this. We have 6 copies over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, right? So we have configured a consistency level of all, right? So when I send the data to this node over here for putting it into the database, so he will ensure that he has written to all the 6 places before he sends me a response saying that I am done, right? So that means it is consistent. So whenever I go to him, wherever I go to get the data, I will always get the right data. So that means my data is consistent in all the 6 nodes where it is supposed to be present. Then we have each quorum, quorum and local quorum. So quorum means we take the majority of nodes. So what does that mean is that you have a formula over here. So quorum is sum of replication factor. So we have a sum of replication factor is 6. So 6 by 2 is 3. So 3 plus 1, 4. So that means that when I send a request to him for storing the data, he's supposed to write it in 6th place, right? So let's say he is sending 1, 2, 3. So he's done with 3, right? And he's done with 4. So the data is over here. So this 5th one and 6th one he has sent, but he's waiting for acknowledgement. But he has received a response from 4 of them. So he can send a OK response back. So you can understand that he doesn't need to wait for all of them to finish. He can send me a response once the quorum of the server has responded OK. That means they have saved into their storage, right? So that's what quorum stands for. Now quorum also has 3 categories as you see over here: each quorum, quorum and local quorum. To understand the difference between this, we have to understand a data center. So data center is a place where we have these servers. So in simple word, this 3 server, let's say, is in one data center. So let's say this is my data center 1, DC1. These 4 servers are in my DC2. They might be in some different location altogether, and this is DC3. So I have 3 data centers, right? And I have a replication factor of 6. So each quorum means a write must be written to the commit log on a quorum of replica nodes in each data center. That means that we do a quorum on each of my data center. So basically over here, it will be 2, 2 and 2, total of 6, right? So basically the formula here will stand as 2 by 2 plus 1. So it becomes 2 only. But you can understand that if I take a higher number over here, let's say 12, that means this will become 4 in each of the data center, right? And that means that out of this 4 replicas, so 4 by 2 plus 1 is 3. So when I am done with 3 here, 3 here and 3 here, then only I can say that my write has been done successfully, right? So it is also considered to have a strong consistency level. Similarly, we have quorum. Quorum means irrespective of the node. So what will happen basically over here is, let's say I have a number 12, right? So 12 by 2, which is 6 plus 1, which is 7, right? So it doesn't matter how many places the write is getting successful. So if I get a 4 from here and 3 from here and 0 from here, then also I'll consider that my write is fine. Total of 7 places should happen before I send out a successful response to my caller. And similarly, we have a local quorum. Okay, let's again take a scenario. So this is my DC1, this is my DC2, and this is my DC3. Okay, so a node is contacted over here. So this is where I have been contacted, and what I'll do is I will do a quorum on this data center only. So if I hear back from, so let's again say I have a replication factor of 12, so it will be 4 over here, right? 4, 4 and 4. So if I do a quorum over here, so what I'll get is I'll get 4 by 2 plus 1, again 3. So if I'm done with 3 nodes over here, I get OK response from 3 of the nodes in the data center quorum where I have received the request. So so this was my coordinator node over here, right? And he has received the request. So I am going to do a quorum on this data center and not these, right? So this is how a local quorum works. Local to the data center where the coordinator node has received the request basically. Then we have one is very lenient one. You can understand that only if you are successful in writing to one of the node you're fine. Then you have 2, you have 3, then you have local 1. So local 1 is very similar to 1. A write must be sent to and successfully acknowledged by at least one replica node in the local data center. Then we have the any being the most lenient one. A write must be written to at least one node. If all replica nodes for the partition are down, you can still say that, okay, you are still fine. You're writing to one node. So you can understand from this table that as we are compromising on the consistency, the availability goes high, right? So it might happen that I'm serving some stale data, but I'm still serving some data. So let's say I am doing any and I have a replication factor of 6. I stored it over here, but remaining all has failed, right? So they all have some old data with them. So this all has failed, right? So if a query hits over here and I will give him some stale data, but my system is still available, right? So instead of any, if I use all, you can understand that my consistency is very high in this case, but my consistency is very low over here. But again, availability is very high over here, but availability is low over here. Unless and until I can finish with all the writes in all the nodes, I cannot entertain any read queries, which might fetch some inconsistent data, right? Similarly, we have the read consistencies as well. So again, it will have a read consistency level of all. Then each quorum is not supported. You have quorum, you have local quorum, you have 1, 2, 3 and all. So let's understand how this works in case of a read, right? So we have seen that in case of a write, it was pretty much simple. So let's say take a replication factor of 6. So that means I'm storing a copy over here and one copy goes here, and similarly few other copies stored in many other places. So now this is what happens. You have put and you have your data like this, right? Now what will happen is, let's say that a read query comes over here. What will happen is this guy knows that the data is with these machines, right? So he's going to contact them all. He is going to query them, all of them, and get the data from each one of them. At the end, what will happen is he will have 6 copies of the data. So the first thing that we have is all, return the record after all the replicas has responded. So here all the replica has responded. I have the copy from all the replica. Now I can easily compare that which one is a stale value. So let's say over here out of these 6 record, I see that we have a, let's say we have timestamp for each one of this field. So this was x, 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 x. This is x minus 10 seconds. This is x minus 20 seconds. So I know that these 4 values are same, and this is a little older and this is again a little more older, 20 second more older. So I know that these are the values which are same and which is latest. So I'm going to respond back with one of these values from this table over here. So you can understand that the consistency level is pretty high in a scenario like all that we have seen over here. We don't have each quorum for read, but we have local quorum and quorum. So as we know what quorum means now, right? So it has to respond back with not all the nodes that we have seen over here. So with a replication factor of 6, so we have 6 by 2, which is 3 plus 1. Only 4 nodes can respond back and I am good to process. So you can understand that I'm not considering all the nodes. So my consistency level goes down by a little bit. We have the local quorum. It means the same thing, that we are going to do the quorum on the data center where we have received the request for serving this data. The importance for having this local quorum is that it can avoid the latency part, right? Because it is local to the data center and your query is inside the same data center from where you are serving the request. So your latency will not take a hit. Then you have 1, 2, 3 and all those things. So again, you can understand that 1 means that any one of the server or the replica has to return with the node, and I am fine with that. That means I am compromising on the consistency. It might happen that the node has returned me some stale data, right? So again, you can see over here how CAP theorem comes into life, that we can either have consistency or availability, right, in the presence of partition tolerance. So partition is already there, right, because we are storing it into multiple places, not in a single PC, and they are split into multiple data center. So if you have partition tolerance, you can either be consistent or you can be available. You can't be all the 3 at the same time. So yeah, with this we have the read consistency and the write consistency covered over here. I'll share the link to this official documentation. You can Google it out as well. So yeah, that's all from this video. Do let me know what you think about this video, and do let me know if you have any questions or doubt, or in fact let me know how's the series going so far. Is it helpful or not? It is always good to hear the feedback from you guys, so that I can work on the feedback and make the videos much better and interactive for you guys. So yeah, with that, we'll end this episode over here. In the upcoming episode, we'll pick up something new and we'll start exploring. As mentioned by John, there are a lot of topics. I'm going to pick one of them and I'm going to proceed with the same. So, yeah, bye bye, take care, and stay safe. See you soon again. Bye bye.